Ryan. So great to meet you. Your
Likewise.
Thank you. And your film, You're No Indian, which premiered at Dances with Films in June, has just gone on to, have a whole other life. It's expanded and you're showing it at different festivals. What initially brought you to this story?
Well, to the first point, it has expanded. We think that this is, it's not just a film; it is a movement. And that's what we're trying to spark. And 60 or 70,000 people on social media following us and getting involved is showing that. We're trying to live that. It's not a movie. It's not about film festivals or distribution. It's about getting people to talk about this issue, which is a human rights issue. That's what the UN says. That's what we firmly believe. What got me into it, I tend to Google random subjects. Sometimes I can't sleep, and I was one day curious about how much does an Indigenous person get from their casino? Come on, I want to know. Are they all rich? I don't know. And it turns out that changes tribe to tribe. Sometimes it's literally zero, and sometimes it's over $100,000 a month. But in looking into this, I came across the subject of disenrollment, where people claimed to be rightful members, and they were kicked out because the fewer people in the tribe, the bigger piece those of the casino revenues those remain get. Um, and so, if they're rightful members, they should be able to appeal. They should be able to go to the state court or the federal court. And it turns out that's not the case. So I personally looked into some of these stories and was convinced that, as far as I could tell, they should be members. Or if those that kick them out, citing whatever their standard was, maybe the other people wouldn't belong too. So what's going on here? So I dedicated the last. I wouldn't say I dedicated the last 7 years. We dedicated the last 7 years, and that's my entire team, so, to bringing this into the light.
Amazing. And, speaking of your team, it's not just you, making this film. I know that you had an Indigenous producer on board as well, who's also in the
Mhm.
film. And then there's
Yeah.
also Wes Studi and Tantoo Cardinal, who are part of your film as well. How did you initially connect with them?
Well, first off, the you're right. It's not just me. My role is to determine what order the interviews are put in. But my role is to try to take something very, very complicated and simplify it so that people can understand it and pay attention long enough so it's entertaining. That's my job. The credit belongs to those that were brave enough to get on camera. And many of whom did so at great personal risk. There is a very real risk of retaliation when you stand up against disenrollment, even if you're not disenrolled. That puts a target on your back. You know, it's the weaponization of fear. And if you are disenrolled and you stand up against it, that uh, limits your chances of getting back in. So it's the weaponization of hope. It's so the people that stood up, that you know literally cried on camera, about this issue, thinking about the generational loss, um, are the people that this film belongs to. And then Santana Rabang is a major help. She's responsible for the canoe stuff and the access and the cultural protocol. But in addition, there are other Indigenous producers that have asked to not be named, again, for that real shot of retaliation. So some of whom are actually now willing to come out and take the credit, but I want to double check with them before I let people know who it is publicly. When it came to connecting with Tantoo, we just love Tantoo. We're giant fans, and so we went through standard communication chains to reach out to her, and she connected with the film and the message. And she, when we brought her into the studio, she said, Ryan, I believe in this cause, and I lend you my voice. And it's an honor to work with her. And since then, she's become somebody that I consider a friend. And then she connected us with Wes Studi. And, he took a look at the film and realized, well, he told me, this is something that, people had been trying to tell him about for, more than a decade. And he said, I always kind of thought maybe it's something that they did, and it is the tribe's prerogative to determine their membership. But he told me that it's the responsibility of the leaders to make their tribe better and not just operate in their own personal gain. So it's incredible to have his guidance and support, and it continues to be a ongoing conversation between the two of us.
I love that. And obviously not to take any credit from you. I mean, you have, made this film and you're directing it and just bringing it to such a wide audience is amazing. And just to have, an ally, as a non-Indigenous person is you're able to amplify that voice even more. So how are you as a non-Indigenous man kind of navigating working on such an Indigenous centered film? Are there any kind of protocols or conversations that you've had to have with maybe Santana and more?
Yeah. Um, it's so easy and so tempting as a non-Indigenous person to think, well, you need to be able to navigate native culture, but that's not the case. I needed to recognize that every tribe is different. Every tribe has different protocols. Every tribe has different traditions, languages, and cultural aspects, all of which need to be navigated with respect and in a good way. What I mean by a good way is listening, to the elders of that tribe and honoring their cultures. And for me personally, getting to see different cultural elements of different nations that are all right around us right now is incredible, and it is truly an honor. But my name's Ryan Patrick Flynn. Coming in as an Irish guy making a film about something as sensitive as disenrollment always comes with initial resistance. But I think that when people see the film, they can see the hearts of the people that made it, mine and others. And to know that we are doing our best to amplify the message of people whose voices have been systematically silenced. Um, and the reason those voices are silenced is because disenrollment thrives in shadows. It's if no one talks about it, you know, tribal politicians, and I say politicians and not leaders with intent. Tribal politicians are able to say, "Oh, the Supreme Court stood with us." The reality is the Supreme Court didn't take the case because of jurisdiction. They were able to say, "Oh, we went thoroughly through their records. Nothing to see here." And they can maintain the status quo that, in my opinion, is continuing the job that the colonizers started, 400 and something years ago.
Absolutely. And I saw the premiere of You're No Indian at Dances with Films Film Festival
You were
back.
there.
Yeah, I was there. It was
Nice.
yeah, no, it was amazing. And the audience reaction, they were so engaged and enthusiastic about it. What has it been like for you to see that as you've moved along this journey with the film?
Um, being in a theater with, hundreds of people and listening to, hearing crying, hearing laughing, you know, um, hearing gasps, was a really insane experience, incredible experience. It was powerful because this is something that I've watched so many times on my own computer, editing it, getting notes from Santana and others. But actually seeing the reaction was a profound and rewarding experience. But more than that, it was after. We saw people that had traveled thousands of miles. And recognizing that the story that they had from their tribe is so similar to the story in another tribe, and that this let's say you are disenrolled from Chukchansi. There's a Chukchansi, disenrolled Facebook group, and it's a closed group. And there's one for Pachanga, and there's one for Nooksack. These are segmented groups. And my personal hope is that from this film there's community and unification between those affected by this, so that instead of it being a thousand here, a thousand there. It's 10,000 plus strong, plus all their supporters. And my hope is that this gives people the courage to stand up and speak out about against it, and shining a light on this issue so it can no longer stay in the shadows.
Absolutely. And just, I know you've spoken about this a little bit already, but what's been the most meaningful part of making this film for you?
I could talk for an hour. It depends on what time of day it is. What I had for breakfast will determine what is the most meaningful. Having the opportunity, um, invited by an elder who runs sweat lodges to sweat on a number of occasions, to so that I could get the permission to film building a sweat lodge. But my experience in the sweat lodge was profound and transcendent and private. But that was the first thing that came to mind there. Seeing people vulnerable, enough to actually talk about intergenerational trauma. And while we don't say the words intergenerational trauma in the film, we show it. People being honest about struggles with suicide, things that have happened to their in their family, and to me, it shows a system that's centuries old, that's by design, was to exterminate or assimilate indigenous people, and there are shadows of that in our culture today. Our system of government is designed or is based on the same system of government that we had hundreds of years ago, when there were state sponsored militia murdering indigenous people. But now we see not just that, we also see cousins fighting against cousins, cousins kicking each other out of their same tribe. People saying, we've never seen you before, so you must not belong, in spite of empirical evidence that they do. Last language speakers literally being disenrolled or fired from the language school for speaking out against it. I firmly believe, and you saw this at our premiere. I believe that a spirit of a people lives in the language that they speak. And so we all speak English, but the spirit of who we are is in there. And there are indigenous languages. And as I learn little pieces of them, I see these phrases, that speak to who they are. And that, how is that anything other than a spirit? And to find out that the last language speaker was fired and they shut down the language school because he stood out up against people being disenrolled. That's sawing the branch of the tree that you're sitting on, culturally.
Absolutely. Well said. And I know that the film has you've been busy since Dances with
Yeah,
Film. Can you
yeah.
just tell me, you've had university screenings, you've been to other film festivals, Red Nation is coming up. Can you just kind of tell me where You're No Indian is right now?
Yeah, where we're at, we've had a number of screenings now. We're very excited about Red Nation, and we have two screenings coming out there, and it's a real honor to be the opening film of Red Nation. I couldn't be more thrilled, to see this disenrollment being talked about amongst indigenous circles. We're also up in Alaska. And we have a number of other things that we're excited to announce that we can't yet. But one of the profound things for me was going into we were at Aspen this weekend, and going into a state where disenrollment doesn't happen. And And listening to the gasps of the audience and people that approached me afterwards saying I had heard of it, but I had no idea it was like this. And that is powerful. Because it's been explained to me, and I agree that disenrollment is an existential threat to all tribes. And what I mean by that is every tribe is one election away from a council majority deciding to have a membership audit. And questions like I've never seen, or statements like I've never seen them before. Do they really belong? What do they want? That's the seed. And if you have a casino operation that's growing and per capita payments are on the table, and you think, well, we have 1,000 members, or we have 10,000 members, that we're getting $1,000 a month. You get rid of 90% of them, that's a six-figure income, and we see that happen, and more. So my hope is that not only does this help people that have been disenrolled, but it also prevents it from happening in future tribes, knowing that there's a growing community of people that are ready and willing to shine a spotlight anytime it happens, on those politicians.
Absolutely. And then just lastly, can you, I know you can't say, I know you have some announcements coming up, but what can you say as far as like what's next for your No Indian?
Well, what's next is the ability to see it, a lot more. You are going to be able to watch this film. We are inundated with like thousands, literally thousands of people saying, "Where can I stream this? How can I see it?" And at the moment, it's a process. We're going through the festival circuit. We're doing university screenings. But as we gain traction and this movement gains traction, so does the ability for people to actually watch this film. So I'm looking forward to, making some announcements sooner than later, but at the moment, we can't yet.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you, Laura. It's really a pleasure. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Are you going to be at